Welcome back to another episode of Man Cave Movie Night. We are so excited to be joined by a very special guest today.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I am very
I'm
excited.
a little excited.
I'm perturbed.
I am amped out of my brain to be joined by my oldest friend.
He's like
because
1,000 years old.
Yeah, he's very, very old. Nicholas Hans Bell, welcome to Man Cave Movie Night. You've got a little something you've got prepared for us. Is that true?
I do. I have a fun little game.
Hooray.
I'm a long-time listener of the podcast, and I love your little cold open, so I have a Price is Right style.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
I love it.
It's all about different books. And so I'm going to ask you a question,
Nice.
and then you all give me an answer closest without going over the actual thing.
Love it.
So the first one is the longest novel ever written, called Artemis au le Grand Cyrus. It's in French.
One of my favorites.
Has how many pages?
Oh, I love it.
Without
Well,
going
Nick-
over.
Nick, can you call us down? I feel like that's a pretty iconic Price is Right thing. You know? Hey!
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Anyone you want to say hi to?
Hey, what's up, Mom? What's up, Dad? I'm just... Hey, I made it. I made it, guys.
Pages do you think are in this book?
Could you repeat the title?
Yes. Artemis au le Grand Cyrus.
Perfect.
And you said it was a long one?
It's the
The
longest
longest
The
one.
longest one.
Okay. I'm going to say, listening to the crowd, seeing what they're
Oh,
yelling.
yelling.
I'm gonna do. Oh, I don't know. It's long. I'm gonna say 3,500.
3,500 words. Great guess. Great guess.
Wait, words or pages?
Pages.
Okay. It's like words.
3,500 words.
Words
It's
is
a
it?
short
10
book.
All right.
Niall,
I've got
come on down.
My name's Niall Thorley. I'd like to shout out my mom. Shout out to Kel. I hope you're holding strong. I hope that things are going well for you. And I'm ready to guess.
How many pages?
I think that Jared lowballed this dramatically. So I am going to guess 13,000.
13,000.
13,000.
Great
Wow.
guess. All right, next contestant, Lucas, go for it.
Oh my gosh, you guys! I'm so excited to be here. I just want to shout out my mom and no one else. Just my
Get
mom.
original.
Just my mom. That is original.
She's
I
the
only want to
original.
shout out my mom.
Okay,
So let's
same.
see. Sorry, I just got in a car accident on the way here, so I'm a little fuzzy. Sorry. What was the question again? My mom's name? I don't remember her name. The only person I can see in my brain is my mom. So, I love you, Mom. Shout out to my mom. Woo! Where am I again?
He just
What game
walks
is
back.
this?
That's the end.
Oh yeah.
That's not the answer we
something,
were looking for.
Pages. Something about pages. Is that right?
How many pages in the
Okay.
book?
You've got a pretty comfortable in-between zone.
I'm gonna guess
Yeah.
Guess it.
1,000,000 pages.
All right, great. A million.
Okay,
Come on.
excellent.
Come on.
Okay,
Come on, let's hear
the
a million.
winner for this book is Niall.
No way.
He,
How
he
many?
was off by 95 pages.
No way.
13,095.
95.
Wow, that's
What a
crazy. What an excellent
I
guess.
definitely thought that I had gone over.
Yeah,
I knew I was lowballing it, but I was the first one. You know,
Yeah,
and I had
totally.
to.
I was pretty
So-
confident.
Wow.
Hey,
so I'm
if you
kinda
were
shocked.
96 pages higher, that would have been mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that
1
Great
million
guess.
was also a good guess. Lucas.
it was a good
It
guess.
was pretty close.
Thank you. Yeah. Like I said,
He
my
did
brain
say the
is not
longest.
quite. Yeah, he said longest, and 1,000,000
Yeah.
is the highest number I could think of. So that's the one I guessed.
Excellent. All right, the next book on the docket, we have the most expensive book ever sold. It is Leonardo da Vinci's Codex. and it was bought by Bill Gates in 1994 for how much money?
Interesting.
Oh.
Do I go first this time?
You're first, Lucas, and it's not 1 million.
That means it must be higher. So I'm going to guess.
That's what it must mean.
Ooh, I'm going to guess $10 million.
$10 million. Good guess, good guess.
I think it is a good guess. Bill Gates was a billionaire by the 90s, so.
All right, Jared.
I liked Niall's guess last time, lucky number 13. I want to say $13 million, Nick.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
I
Niall.
feel like I have a chance to be a real bad guy here, and I might just do it. So I am gonna guess. No, I'm not. That's too mean. No, you know what?
Do
I
it,
am.
do it,
This
do
is
it.
an
Play the game,
entertainment
Say it.
podcast.
Say it. 13 million and one. Just say it.
$13,000,001.
$1. 13 million and $1. Well, you would win.
Okay, my actual guess, like now that I've won, is it's gotta be over $50 million.
Okay, pretty good guess. So, in 1994, it was sold for $30.8 million. But if you convert that to like 20 years of inflation, it's $64 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not even that gripping of a read.
It's one page.
Bill Gates is like, I don't even know what language this even is.
Like, it's alright. It kind of like, the pacing isn't that great. I guess
Excellent.
the end.
Okay, and now for the final question. The novel Atlas Shrugged. It has over 500,000 words. How many times is the word Atlas mentioned? Could be a proper noun.
I
could be
love
a-
this
a
question.
noun.
I
That's
love this
great.
question.
Interesting.
Just a
500,000?
raise of hand. Who's read this?
I have not, but I actually just read about it today. Weirdly enough,
Okay,
came up
that
in my
happens
feed
a
and I
lot.
read about it. So
I
Wow.
feel like that happens a lot with these kind of games
yeah,
specifically.
it's happened to us
It's like the
many
day
times.
we learned something. I have not read it either. I honestly have maybe heard the name before.
I bought it from the DI with the express purpose of never reading
And just owning it.
it.
You're like, yeah, I've got that one.
Yeah, Atlas Shrugged. One of my favorites I own. Okay, so
All
wait,
right.
Niall's turn
I
to
think
go
that's
first.
me
Niall
first.
Yeah,
then,
Niall,
right?
you guess first.
Well, it's Price is Right, so it can't be 0. But I feel like it's
Oh, that'd be
0.
fun.
So I'm going to guess 0.
Oh,
Wow, interesting.
Okay. All right, Lucas.
How many words did you say there were in the book?
Over 500,000. 500,000.
Then I am going to guess 500,000 times.
It says it's just Atlas.
Atlas.
And you have to determine the hidden meaning based on where the page breaks and paragraph separations are.
Okay, so
Final
Jared,
answer.
you have a huge middle ground.
Yeah.
to
Well,
navigate.
when you first said it, my initial thought was maybe once. It feels like a funny, like, at some point, you know, in a movie, they say, now that's, what's the book called? Atlas
Atlas
Shrugged.
Shrugged.
Atlas
Shrug.
Shrugged.
Yeah, and they'll say, like, that really was an Atlas Shrugged. Like, right at the end. I guess the Atlas
Turns out
Shrug
I was the Atlas Shrug all along.
The Atlas Shrug was the summer we had that we'll never forget. So I want to
Lean
say
on Me starts
once,
playing.
and maybe,
One time.
I mean, that's the safest
Yeah, that's
answer as well.
the correct answer for you to say.
It is the correct answer. It is one time.
Yes!
When is it? On the title
Is-
page?
Well, excluding the title page, one time, two
It's the
characters
quote.
have a discussion, and they're like, "What would you tell Atlas?" And you say, "I don't know," to shrug.
No
No way.
Is that actually what happens?
Yep, I control F'd on a PDF copy of the book to find one instance of Atlas.
I don't know. To which he shrugged.
Jeez.
Oh,
Atlas Shrugged, man.
oh my
so
gosh.
Niall, you almost went 3 for 3. If
I
Jared
almost
had not
did.
guessed one.
Wow.
And I almost did too, right?
You were so close.
Sorry,
Yeah,
my
you
short-term
were-
memory is not what it once was.
Before the accident.
Before the
that
accident.
You just got in.
So how many questions do we have left? And how many?
We have, I've got one more. We can do one.
Oh, nice.
Why not?
When's my birthday?
How many days
We've
old?
been friends for a long time, Lucas.
I do know his birthday. December 16th.
You got it.
That's also my answer.
Huh? No, wait!
Okay, here is the last question. The largest library in the world is the Library of Congress.
True.
There are over 12,000 editions added to it daily.
Whoa.
Oh,
There's a rough estimate of how many works are in the library. How many works do you think are in it?
Well, I just want to say there's only one book in there that really concerns me, and it's the book that they go and look for in National Treasure
Page
2.
47.
yeah.
course.
Yeah. Isn't it 72?
40-something, I thought.
Well, Lucas has a safer bet because if you went over, Niall, that's true. No, we don't know. I want to know how many
47.
words in there
It is page
are,
47.
Oh, well done.
are
Okay.
just smut. You know, in the Library of Congress.
It
how much
has
is
to be.
how
Well,
much
if
is
12,000 are added a day.
12,000 are added a day, and there's been at least 20 days.
All right, Nick, I'll go first this time. I'm feeling pretty good about guessing 1 billion books.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like that's safer than most of your other bets this game.
12,000
It's
times
so
365. It's pretty high.
I'll go next. I guess I want to say 10 million.
10
To me, that
million.
seems like an impossible amount of books.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I really don't know.
I'm not gonna play it safe, because 10 million and 1 books is a lame way to play this game. So now I'm going full throttle, and I am gonna say 35 million books.
35 million books. Okay.
And I think it's
Let me
way
just say,
higher
Nick,
than that
before you
even.
calculate-
I already want to go
Or
higher.
before you say it,
Before you count.
12,000 times 365 is over 4 million. So that's 4 million a year if it actually is 12,000 a day.
Okay.
So it could be nearing.
So I'm
a
curious what the
billion.
answer is, Nick.
Okay, so it's an estimate. I don't think they've counted every single book, but it is around 167 million.
Oh,
With a
Was that
B?
million or
Physical
billion?
Million with an M.
Oh,
Oh,
dang it.
great.
Dang it. Oh,
wow. Wow.
100
I was
billion
saying, I was
books.
100 billion. When I thought he said billion, I was like, get out of here, dude. You can't fit 100 billion books on Earth.
Every person on Earth has written 1 million books.
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
You know, Lucas, I had another question. We won't do it, but it was who the author who has sold the most books, and 1 billion would be half the amount.
It's got to be Stephen
I
King.
kind of want to guess. Is it Stephen King?
No.
That's my guess as well.
It's got to be Matthew
Who wrote
from the book.
Don
of, who,
Quixote?
who wrote the Bible?
King James?
Yeah, does he count as the author?
Does he count as the
of
author?
Of the
Well,
Was it Harry?
KJV?
Is it J.K. Rowling?
no, it is Agatha Christie, the person who wrote
Really?
Murder on the Orient Express.
Wow. That's
That's
very
crazy.
impressive.
Good job, Aggie.
Good job.
2
Aggie
billion
Christie?
copies sold of just the
Worldwide.
Murder on the Orient Express.
Everyone knows how it ends.
Well, maybe we should celebrate Agatha Christie by playing her favorite song in the entire world. What do you think?
I agree.
That's a good idea.
Well,
Oh,
let's do
wait,
it.
we don't have it on record. Here's her second favorite song, though.
Oh, okay. and welcome back. Now, based on the intro, you probably have come to the conclusion that we're going to be talking about books this week, and also
based on the title.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Okay, I was going to
What
say
you
that
clicked
too.
on.
We're
Books.
talking about numbers.
Well, here's the thing, though.
We
Sometimes,
famously
number.
don't title our episodes until a week after we publish
sometimes
them, so
the
that you can
episodes
wonder.
autoplay, and if someone is driving and their phone is in their
True.
pocket, they don't know what the episode is. So it's books.
First of all,
and
Shush.
get Apple CarPlay.
Yeah, yeah. Get
Yeah,
a better
driving
car.
your 2002 car up out of here.
And we again are joined by our very good friend Nick Hans Bell. Nick,
This is the
go
best
ahead
day
and,
of my life.
It
Before
is.
you go, Nick, this is the best
Thank
day
you.
of my life.
Welcome to the
This
podcast.
is the second best day of my life.
Why don't you explain
Oh,
to us
wow.
why you chose books, Nick? Why you chose books as your topic?
So I chose books as my topic because ever since I was a little kid, I have loved reading.
Nerd.
Nerd.
You know, you would not be wrong. From like 3rd grade up until 9th grade, did you guys do AR points where you'd read
Oh.
the book and then take
Oh,
the test?
Yeah.
I was the number 1 AR point getter for like 6 years straight.
This is true because I was
Yeah,
there
bro.
and I witnessed it.
What's your reading
You're-
level? Like what? What are you
Ninth
reading
grade.
at these days?
It's pretty high. It's like
That's pretty cool.
college sophomore.
Oh, that's really cool.
Very impressive.
Nice.
Very good.
Very impressive for a 4th grader.
Yes, book's good.
Book's
good.
very good.
That's an official Orange Boys opinion.
Yeah, Nick and I met in 4th grade, and
We did meet in 4th grade.
pretty
Did
cool.
you hang out, or
how
did
did it
you
go?
kind of
We
stay away
did.
from him because of how nerdy and how much of an outcast he was?
Well, Nick got me hooked on books and got me reading at such a youthy age. He got me reading Percy Jackson and Fablehaven, and yeah, and I owe all my intellect to Nick. Everything I've ever
Couldn't have
learned
done
from
it
a
without
book,
me.
I couldn't have done it without Nick. But
I also taught him how to read.
yeah, he taught me how to read because I arrived when I was 9 years old to Farmington Elementary School, and I was like, "Hey, Nick,
And you
you're
didn't
my
know how to
friend.
read yet?
Will you teach me how to read?" And he was like, "Yes. Here's Fablehaven 1.
Figure it out.
Figure it out." Yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about some questions. Let's yap at each other. Who wants to go first? Is anyone's?
Can I
question
ask a
for-
preliminary question just because we have the expert in the house?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Books. Man.
Nick, audiobooks. Does that count? Is that reading?
Yes. You know what? Yes, I was going to bring this up. I have not read a physical book in a long time. Like, I almost exclusively do audiobooks, and almost at any given point, if you see me walking, driving, I have an AirPod in and it's listening to a book. I have a yearly Audible subscription, and I have 2 cards on Libby that are constantly getting books for us.
Wow,
Bro,
dude.
you are going.
That's
burning
crazy.
through.
He's listening to Dune in the right ear and War and Peace in the left.
In 3rd grade, I boasted that I could listen to a book and read a different book at the same time. And I did it multiple times, but I was reading like
At a
first
3rd grade level. What
That
what
is still
percentage were you
wild.
scoring on your AR tests?
You know, a lot of them I was like barely passing, but I was passing.
And you were getting the points.
I was getting the points.
That's what matters.
It was just harvesting points.
What do you win from AR?
Nothing.
No,
Clout.
actually,
Clout. Yeah.
the little personal pizza coupons from Pizza Hut.
That's true.
Yeah,
You
man.
did get
Sick.
those. I do remember that
Sick.
actually.
Well,
That is freaking awesome.
that's great. Well, that's good because I do also listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah.
I like to, use my time to do a lot of things. And so when I can double up, read a story or read a book that I really want to read by listening to it, and also go on a walk or work on stuff or whatever,
Or eat
that is always
a meal,
ideal for me. Yeah. I sometimes eat meals.
depending on the day.
Yeah, with my personal pizza cards that I got from AR.
Nice. You're still holding on to those.
Yeah. They
I'm
don't
sorry.
expire, so.
I have to interrupt really quick just because I've received funny texts and I just want to share them because
And that's
I think
reading.
that it's funny. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I've been reading
wow.
these texts that I'm getting. I got a text. I won't share the whole conversation. I'll just share how it started. A girl I know texted me and said, "How tall are you?" And I responded, 6'3". And she said, "How down are you to get set up on a date?" And I said, "Not super enthusiastic if that's the screening question." She's talking to some friend and they want to set me up on a date. And the girl's like, "Well, how tall is he?" Like, ugh. I just
that's a
hate
pretty good sign.
that. I hate it
Niall,
so
play
much.
to your strengths, man.
Yeah, you should have said
That's
7 foot.
my only strength.
6
I'm
feet
6'3"
and 3
and I
inches.
play D&D twice a week. Anyway, sorry. I just thought that was
That was very
a,
funny.
s- a
Here's
silly,
the thing.
goofy little gaff.
Lots of people be yapping about how they don't like reading, but they're reading on social media all day
Oh,
long.
people be
What
reading
is
on social media
if
all the
not
time.
reading? It's
Yeah,
not a
TikTok
book.
is really a lot of reading.
It's
and
not a
just
book.
mindlessly watching videos.
Yeah, there are
They
words.
sync the
There's-
audio and the words on the screen to capture your attention.
Exactly. Yeah, and they're reading. It's not good reading, but it is reading. Anyway, someone have a question they want to start us off with, or no?
We got a bunch of good questions.
We got
What's-
good ones. I feel like mine's better for later.
Okay.
All right, I'll start. This is
Yeah.
a pretty broad
this is a
book
good one to start
topic.
with. That's what I was
Yeah, you are able to do a imperial mandate across the entire world. You get to decide one book that everyone is required to read. No exceptions. What book are you choosing for everyone to read?
for the whole
I
planet.
kn-
The whole planet.
Goodnight Moon.
lull everyone to sleep.
Yeah. Everybody in the world, if everyone took a nap, there would be no war.
True.
Wow.
Actually, that's a good point.
Bold statement.
Yeah, mine is the insert packet for Pokemon Y.
Case insert. Okay, no, but this is a good question.
This
I
is a great question.
Oh,
want
good
to answer
answers.
it well.
I have my answer.
Nick, go.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
Nick,
hear it.
please.
It's a
expert.
book I've read plenty of times. It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. He's
Dave.
like,
Classic.
Dave, the
Davey
hard
Goggy.
Dave.
yeah, he's like an ex-Navy SEAL, ultra marathon runner, and he's written 2 books, and they're both incredible.
Is he the guy who
Just
talks
all-
about how he wants to be in a room full of hard men?
Yeah.
What?
You'll have to look it up
It
for
is a
context,
meme.
but it's
Okay, yeah.
Giving everybody homework immediately.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what else is this? You're telling people to read a book. That's the whole point of this question.
Amazing.
But yeah, tell me about this
Yeah,
book.
tell us
why
more about this
David
book.
Goggins? Because you want everyone to just leave their house and run an ultra marathon without training? Because that's very
No.
the Goggins mentality, isn't it?
Literally, it's in his book, like, halfway, and he's like, yeah, I did this. I literally ran 100 miles, no training, and he's like, I pooped myself at the end. My feet were broken. But the reason I like it so much is he talks so much about, like, you know, holding yourself accountable, developing that mental toughness, and so that, like, you can do more. Like, you can give more than you think you can, and, like, your brain is stronger than your body, and if you push yourself, you're going crazy.
Cool.
Nice.
I like
awesome.
it. I dig it.
I've got an answer actually. Also, it's interesting that you kind of went that route because that was the same thing that I was thinking. Kind of a motivational self-help type book that I read once upon a time and loved, and it's called Feeling Good by David Burns, MD, and he is a cognitive psychotherapist. And the whole premise of the book is basically. The theory of cognitive psychotherapy is that you can't feel any emotion without processing the input beforehand. And therefore, if you change your mentality, if you change the way that you think about certain inputs in your life, you can kind of have an effect on the emotions that you feel. So basically, circumstances don't necessarily need to decide how you feel. You can change the way that you process input. And it's really interesting because he goes on to say, like, this isn't to say that you won't ever be sad. You need to be sad. You need to have hard days. This is just a way to change the way you think so that you're not finding a negative spin on all inputs that come in, which is a very common thing for people with depression, people with anxiety, things like that. They find a way to make any input contribute to their bad emotion. And so he goes through a bunch of exercises of how you can kind of change the way that you process inputs to have more productive and positive reactions to them. And it's great. And there's like little exercises that you can do in the book that you like get a pencil and you write stuff in, and it's great. It's really, really good. So it's not a super like fun, like, this is a great, like it's not a story, but
not The Giver,
being
which was your second answer, right?
Yeah. It's my second favorite Ayn Rand book. But is it Ayn Rand? No, I was thinking of Anthem. Dang it!
Yeah.
Oh, I'm such an idiot! I just ruined this whole podcast.
No, it's okay. You caught yourself.
That's fine. You caught yourself.
So our listeners don't have to call you out. And you don't have to make a public apology.
I hate being wrong and stupid.
All right,
Anyway,
I have my book.
That's my book. I even as a person who doesn't have like diagnosed depression or anxiety, I felt that it had a change in my life, and so I think you don't need to be depressed or anxious or any of these things for that book to help you out.
Nice,
cool,
very cool.
And let's real quick give a shout out to Lois Lowry, author.
Lois Lowry, of course.
Yeah, I remember reading that book.
Lois, I'll never
I was
forgive
just
you
saying,
again.
Lois Lane.
Mine is
the
also
employee of the Daily Planet.
Well, I don't know. Clark Kent works there too. He's a
nerd.
hunk. No, he's a
That
hunk.
nerd.
He has glasses.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're right.
not even one curl in his hair on his forehead.
Yeah, not even one. That is pretty suspicious of him.
Yeah.
My book is also nonfiction. I've owned this one for a while, but I've always loved it. It's the Ultimate Lego Star Wars Character Manual.
Lucas is fighting every urge that we give him to be serious today.
Do you have the Padme? Is she in there?
Yeah, she is in here somewhere.
Well, she could
It
have.
has every single minifigure.
It's got to be
as
all
of
of them, right?
2016 or something. But that's not my actual answer. I just wanted to bust that out, show it
You
off.
just wanted to flex on
I
us.
just wanted to show that one off because
I'm actively jealous.
I do like that book. And I have read the whole thing. But this is a different book that if I had to require everyone on Earth to read it, it would be Frankenstein by Mary
Oh,
Shelley.
nice.
So,
Very good pick.
Also nonfiction.
Yeah, also nonfiction. But this actually was a book that I was required to read as a senior in high school. And I was like, bah, required reading, boo. And then I started reading this book and I was like, hey, wait a minute. This is
Required reading, yay.
This is actually pretty good. And I don't think that I would have ever read it if it hadn't been required. And so that's kind of the similar mentality. This book, I think, literally changed my life because of how much I loved it and reinvigorated my passion for reading when I was in high school because I kind of fell off for a while. I think it's one of the best stories ever told. I love a lot of the movie adaptations from like the 30s, but they're just poorly. They don't like actually show what the book is about. So I would love for people to read it because it is an excellent book. Really kind of goes deep into what it means to be like a human, like and a person kind of, because the whole idea is this person who was created artificially, and this was written in the 1800s, like way before any of that technology was even thought of being even comprehensible. So yeah, absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean cloning is not the most absurd thing out there,
and
like,
AI.
AI, exactly. So we're living in a different world now, but Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I love it.
Mary
Made a pretty good
Shelley.
movie adaptation of it.
That is true. I did make that.
Everybody go and watch
it.
The Tragedy of
on
Frankenstein.
YouTube.com. Yeah, if you want to watch a 3-minute thing. And Guillermo del Toro is a huge fan of the book, and he is adapting the book into a faithful adaptation
He says.
as a movie.
Albatross and all.
But there is going to be some fish love in it at
Yes,
some point.
yeah.
Good.
The same fish from The
So-
Shape of Water will show up and
Yeah.
make out with Frankenstein.
The monster universe is finally happening.
Yes, that is.
We've waited long enough.
Those are great answers.
Thanks.
The one I'll
Thanks
throw
for the
in.
compliment.
So, and we'll talk about this, I think, later about rereading stuff. I don't really reread stuff. And so it's hard for me to say, this is my favorite book. Like this one, every time I come back to it, I just love it. So I'm just going based off of ones I've only read once and the ones I think are applicable to a lot of people. The one that comes to my mind is one I recently finished called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it's kind of like a two-part book. The first part is about Viktor Frankl's experience in the concentration camps during the Holocaust. He was a Jewish citizen of Germany, I believe, and was put into some of the worst conditions anyone could ever live in, right? And when he got out, luckily he survived. He was able to share, what kept him going through that and how he was able to find meaning in the worst circumstances ever. And so the first part of the book are his recounting of his experiences. The second part of the book is him going into his research. He's a psychotherapist and talks about how people can find meaning in their life regardless of circumstances. And it's really cool and very powerful. And while I was reading it, I was jotting down a bunch of different quotes that I just loved from it. That I'm sure this will be one of those books that I will reread because it was powerful and it was very impactful. And whether I read the whole thing or just one part or the other part, I'm not sure. But I do know that it was, I think it's great. And I think everyone should be informed that the Holocaust is real and happened and was horrible. This is our podcast
This is official
Bro.
Orange Boy opinion.
Official Orange Boy.
The Holocaust
to
happened.
deny nothing. Yeah,
We
exactly.
deny nothing here. And so that's my answer. I'll also say in a lot of the nonfiction books that I've read, so many people quote this book in Viktor Frankl, right? Like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or I think Atomic Habits. Just a bunch of, I'm trying to think of other ones. The Defining Decade. A bunch of them just will talk about Viktor Frankl. And so there you go. You're part of the loop. You'll know what all these people are talking about.
Nice.
You have to read it.
Nice.
That good.
We'll read.
Nice.
That good.
I think this.
I like
Go, Nick. Sorry.
thinking. Well,
Lucas.
Lucas, come on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think
We have a
therefore
guest.
I am. But Nick, you just go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I really like that. I really like all your guys' answers. I think a lot of them, there's a lot of stuff that if, people read, they could be well informed. They could better their own situation, whether it be psychological, physical, mental, and we could just be better.
I agree.
Big.
I totally
good.
agree. There's a book that is super, super short, and there's a free audiobook on Spotify that you can listen to. It's called As a Man Thinketh, and it is densely packed with philosophies.
Therefore he ameth.
Therefore he ameth. And that was one of the ones I was thinking about. Again, it's very recent that I listened to it, so I'm like, there's a big recency bias there.
Yeah.
But hey, if you're looking for some solid life advice, talking about how your thoughts impact your actions and who you are, As a Man Thinketh, like a 1-hour audiobook. It is
Nice.
super short and it's free, so check it out.
Pretty cool.
That's an easy man cave recommendation that is free.
I think
And
I'd rather
worth your
listen to an episode of Spartless.
Honestly, it is very dense, and it might
So it's put it on
like I
0.8
found my
speed.
brain starting to fry after half of it, so
So
I'll
break
have
it
to
up.
revisit that one again. Yeah.
I think that my question would be good to go next, because it
I don't.
maybe sometimes you've been told to read a book and said, "Hey, I don't want to read this whole book, and you give up on it. Or maybe you just start a book that you had been told was good or you had thought would be good, and then it wasn't. And then at some point you were like, you know what? Maybe I'll give that book another chance. And you go back and start reading it again. You're like, hey, wait a minute. This is actually a good book. And so my question is, has that ever happened to you? And what was it? What do you think?
It's happened to me 2 times.
Oh.
Both with books that were assigned reading in school. Actually, I think they were assigned reading in the same year of school, which is interesting.
Was it
in
senior
high
year?
school?
Senior
I
year?
can't remember.
Well, let us know.
That
We'll
all
tell you.
blurs together. But they were both books that I kept taking the reading quizzes and stuff, but I wasn't reading them. And I've since gone back and read both of these books and really just kind of loved them on another level. And I'm probably going to get some heat for these just because they're famous school books that people hate in school. But they are The Great Gatsby and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Nice.
Junior year.
Yeah, I was going to say
I
that's...
love those books so much. There's something to me about like the classical, like classic American literature that I don't know why it's so appealing to me, but it didn't resonate with me in the time where it was assigned, but now I don't know. It's just so poetic. I love the way that the things in between the actual actions of the book, the way things are described it's always described with such poetry and beauty. And with Huckleberry Finn, the imagery and just the storytelling of it, you feel like the story is being told to you. You're not reading the events of something, but something is being recounted to you. And there's something magical about the way that those books put images into your head and make you think. And I don't know. I think in high school, I was like, I just want things to be happening in the book, you know, but I would love to read a book that things aren't happening, but everything is described in a very poetic and beautiful way. And so that's increasingly appealing and important to me in a book. And I think that those 2 books kind of represent that change for me. So,
Well, you would love the Fellowship of the Ring.
I know. Everyone is always, anytime somebody tells me and they're like, yeah, and he takes 3 pages describing a door, it's stupid. And I'm like, that sounds awesome to me. I like, and I'm not trying to sound like pretentious or like, oh, well, I see the beauty in what you don't, but it's like, that stuff has just always been really appealing to me, you know, like description, it's there for a reason. And maybe the reason isn't to advance the story, but you need to find what that reason is. And I don't know. I love that stuff. So
Sweet.
That's fun.
Love it.
Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, anything Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, they're just such fun books.
yeah,
They just like really like tell like we were all those like young kids and like
Yeah.
we just wanted to like go have fun.
You know, actually, and funnily enough, I also made an adaptation of Huck Finn with Nick. Yeah, in
You
8th
did?
grade.
Wow.
Yeah, in 8th grade
Yeah.
on
I
the
didn't know
same
that.
YouTube
Wow.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah, you were Huck Finn.
And you were Tom Sawyer, right?
I was Tom Sawyer.
you'd be a
And-
great
Wow.
Tom.
Yeah. So if you go to Humpback Squirrel on YouTube and scroll down far
Is it
enough-
still there?
Oh yeah, of course, it's
It's
still
still
there.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm watching that tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's immediately when we're
I
done
think
recording.
was that elementary school? No, it was 8th grade.
Yeah.
I think it was 8th grade.
Eighth
Wow.
grade.
Yep.
Well,
Adorable.
I think in that same vein of talking about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, I feel like Tom Sawyer is the Hobbit to Huckleberry Finn's The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, big
Where
time.
one is just straight up like a kid story, kind of chill and fun, and the other one is an epic that
Yeah.
tackles questions about like racism and like,
just general morality
gen-
and yeah.
So yeah, big fan. I
Thanks.
didn't love the Fellowship of the Ring though. That's pretentious.
Well, yeah.
too many songs. Way too many songs.
All right, Nick.
Okay.
This has actually also happened to me twice. One of them I did finish reading. The second one, it's a series, and I'm partway through it, but I still haven't finished it, but I will one day. And so the book, it's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and also an ex-Navy SEAL.
Nice.
Wow. All right.
But I saw the book on my boss's shelf, and I was like, hey, can I borrow that? In January. And then in October, I realized I still had the book, and I was like, I gotta return this. But, it's just another great book about, decision-making, accountability, leadership, and one of his biggest quotes is discipline equals freedom. So, just like the more control you have over your life, the more freedom you have.
Nice.
But the other book is it's the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan.
Ah.
Big.
Wow.
And
1 million words.
Big.
Over 1 million words.
so
That's real.
many words. I started the first one, and then I didn't finish it. I went on my mission. I came back. I read up to the middle of book 8. And,
Wow.
there's so much stuff going on in these books that, it's almost too much to process, but it's really cool. They have a really cool magic system, the really cool characters, really good development. And I remember the exact time I was walking to one of my classes halfway through book 8, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. I gotta read something else. And I just immediately chose something new.
Yeah.
I can't
When
do
does-
it anymore.
What book does Brando Sando take over?
Halfway through 12, I think.
Gotcha.
How many
Halfway
are there?
through a book. Interesting.
Yeah. Robert
Wow.
Jordan bit the dust, and then Robert Jordan came in. Brandon Sanderson came in for 3.5 books.
Wow.
Whoa.
Man.
Well, I've got good news for you, Nick.
Oh, yeah?
You don't need to read them anymore because there's an Amazon Prime series.
Yeah, so you can just watch it.
So you could just watch that instead.
Yeah, we
No.
love good adaptations that happen.
I was so excited to watch that. So many things have come out, and the first episode is pretty good. You're like,
Oh,
you know
that's
what?
a bummer
This could
even
be-
more.
This could be good. And then as it goes on, it's just so poorly done. They stray so far from the source material that they're just creating something new, and it's this isn't the Wheel of Time.
That's
this
so
is
sad.
$100 million Amazon original. It's not even Wheel of Time.
Hey,
Classic.
those are the best.
We love
That's
those.
brutal.
$100 million Amazon originals are the best adaptations.
Yes,
we've
those are
found
my favorites.
Historically.
historically. My answer, pretty basic, is Harry Potter.
Oh, nice.
I read the first book because it was maybe some sort of I needed AR points, or it was a required. I needed to read a book, and so I was like, all right, Harry Potter kid book, let's do it. And listened to it mostly while I played video games and stuff, and just ended, and it was fine. I was like, cool, whatever. I like the movies a lot. The book was fine. And then I think it was right after I graduated high school. I was like, all right, I've got a summer to do whatever I want. Let's read Harry Potter.
Nice.
And I read
I
all
remember
7
this.
books. And it was great. All of them were really, really, really good. I liked them a lot.
Nice.
And yeah, so I think just committing myself to reading it was all I needed to do. Discipline, baby.
Yeah,
It
like
equals
Nick.
power for
Nice
me.
about getting through a series, man. It
Yeah.
feels really good.
Yeah, I
I
feel
was
like
like-
I remember that actually too.
I'm like, now I can read something new, a new installment to this series called The Cursed Child.
Oh,
And then I read The Cursed Child,
Cursed.
and now I don't like Harry Potter anymore.
But you've got the Fantastic Beasts movies. You
That's
can
true.
still
We do have
the
those.
Crimes of
That's good.
Grindelwolf.
and at
was
least we have the
so
remake
good.
to look forward to.
Yeah,
as
remake
well,
series.
which,
Yeah.
Nick,
very awesome.
interestingly, actually, we're gonna have to talk more about this after the episode. But I've had a similar thing with your Wheel of Time. I just realized this, so this is a late time to say this, but I've had the same thing with Oathbringer, the third Stormlight Archives book. I listened to The Way of Kings and then immediately Words of Radiance, and then immediately I listened to Edge Dancer, and then immediately I went into Oathbringer. Edge Dancer's like the kind of in-between thing. And I'm like 20 chapters in, and I'm like, dude, I need to do something else for a little while. I'll come back to this, but I'm like 110 hours into this series. I need to stop.
That's so much.
And here's book 4 for you.
Yeah, I know. They just keep getting bigger.
my God.
They just keep getting bigger.
Have you read it?
Oh,
Yeah, and the fifth book comes out November,
dude,
December.
he
Right.
doesn't stop.
Yeah, and I want to reread all of them so bad, but like I don't know if I can. They're so long.
They're so long.
In 6
and-
months, yeah.
But they're
Oh my
really good.
gosh.
Dude, at least reread Words of Radiance, which is by far the best one yet.
So
Like-
good. And you know the scene I'm talking about. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Freaking so cool. Anyway, that's all. I'll have to tell you more because there's one element of the book that keeps driving me so crazy that I'm like, I can't just get into this right now.
Yeah, because it'll
But
be
we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we could do a whole Brandon Sanderson episode, except that I've never
We really
read
could.
any of his-
I
could.
have now read enough
Nick
where
and
I feel
Niall
like
could
I could
do
at
a
least
side
hold my
episode.
own. Yeah.
Just yapping about Brando. So my book is also pretty basic, but whatever. It's the Star Wars character encyclopedia, so
Oh my
different from the
gosh.
Lego version.
That one's hard to get through.
Which the Lego one is a little bit easier because it shows them as
Yeah.
minifigures. Just to reopen it, just like, yeah, you can see them as sets. Just the normal character encyclopedia just shows them as like just normal people, which isn't quite as engaging or fun.
Well, I've heard the second half is also
so I
difficult
gave up on
because
it
it's
for a while.
alphabetical, right?
Yeah. It is alphabetical. I gave up on it, but then I came back around to it and ended up really enjoying it. So I'd recommend this one as
That's
well
great.
for anyone looking for a nice read. But then the other one I have is similar situation to some of you where it was in school for. I just like wanted to read this because the movies were coming out, and also I needed AR points or something. And so I started Catching Fire, the second book in the Hunger Games, and I was like, man, this is not good. And I got about 60 pages in.
Same.
I actually also didn't finish Catching Fire.
So
Same, but I never took it back up. I
Same.
just, yeah.
so I got about
bailed.
60 pages and gave it up, and I was like, whatever. Came back at another time where I was in a similar spot where I needed AR points or something, and was like, you know what? Let's just pick up where I left off. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is actually really good. And I was talking to people, they were like, oh yeah, the first 60 pages is the worst part. Everything after that is awesome. And so that was what I found to be true. Everything after that point was great. And it's, in my opinion, the best of the books. And I liked it so much that I read Mockingbird right after that, which I think
And
is a
loved
bad
it.
book. I did not like it at all.
That's what I hear.
I read it in like
That's
a
so
week,
funny.
and I was like, oh, dude, this is such a slog to get through. But Catching Fire was great. Gave it up and came back to it, and so yeah, I definitely enjoyed that book.
Good answer.
All
Well,
right,
hey,
good answers all
That's
around.
been once adapted. And so, segueing into my question seamlessly, I want to ask you guys what's a book that would be really hard to adapt, and how would you go about doing it? This is kind of topical because of Dune right
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah.
a kind of
Hard to
just
adapt, but they
famously
did it.
like people thought it was unadaptable, especially after the 1984 one. They were like, you just kind of can't do it.
Can't
And
do it.
then it was done super well, but changes needed to be made. So I want to know what you guys think is a book that's like that would be hard to adapt but deserves it, and how would you do it?
You know, almost everything Brandon Sanderson writes is like visual in your mind. You can imagine it, and it's really cool. But
Yeah.
trying to put it on screen, like, almost impossible. Honestly,
Right.
like if talking one of Mistborn, where like people are like they're almost flying, but they're using like metals to like push and pull, and
Yeah.
like, manipulating emotions. It would just be so hard to like convey that. So I don't know how you would adapt it. Maybe like I guess,
Just
really good
normal
special effects.
flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you push and pull, you have those blue lines, right? That show you where metal is. You could run with that. I could see visually,
Yeah.
but it
could do
would
that.
be really hard.
But there's also just the idea of like something that gets described so many times in those books is like trajectory. Like, because you're pulling on it, but you're pulling on two different anchors or pulling on one thing and pushing on another to alter your trajectory. And so it's like in the book, in like, you know, action sequences, altering trajectory is like a huge thing. And in like a visual format, I feel like you could either do that super well or it would not come across at all. And it's like super fine line. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how to go about that. Do you have any ideas, Nick, of like what you would do?
No, I think what Jared said, like, really, like, implicate, maybe have, like, a different, like, string or, like, a thing that appears every time they're using a certain metal to do something. But I think, like, if they made a really good show that was, like, good book and, like, a good adaptation, maybe the effects wouldn't be so much necessary. Like,
Yeah,
if it was good enough, maybe they wouldn't need to rely so heavily on special effects.
Well,
That's true.
And hey, this is going to be my answer as well for mine, and this is my answer for pretty much any adaptation. Animate it, baby. You
Yeah.
can get away with so much just by animating it, you know, and then having like those points where they're like the internal dialogue. It's not weird or cringy at all.
Yeah.
It's just you hear them talking and looking. I'm gonna have to push on their emotions.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can rile their hate, you know, or whatever.
Or showing the medals in their stomach. Like,
That
you
would
can't
be
really
so
do that
cool.
live action, but you can in this, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it just doesn't get as good of ratings. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to animate anything.
True.
I will go with my answer, which of course had to come up, the Red Rising trilogy.
Yeah.
Guys, these are my favorite books by far. And the whole world takes place in like a distant futuristic science fiction society where humans have adapted and become different colors is what they're called, right? And all these different colors have different parts to play in society. The golds are the leaders, and they're 7 feet tall plus, and they're strong, and they, you know, command fleets and stuff. And then you have the blues, who can, like, they have basically wires through their body, and they can hack into ships and fly them really well, and stuff like that. And then you have the reds. They're 3-4 feet tall, super scrawny, who just do, like, slave labor, right? That society is bad. They have to change things. That's what the whole book's about. However, thinking about an adaptation where some of the characters are 3 feet tall and some are 7 plus, without the care that the Lord of the Rings trilogy put into it, with like perspective shifting, it's just not going to work unless you animate it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And having a world that's built on colors and this classism, like, you can get really vibrant colors through animation that would look super cool and immediately be able to identify different people. Plus, so much of the book is about internal dialogues and this character making decisions and weighing different options and trying to lead people he hates and, you know, trying to gain influence in a place where he doesn't belong. Like, so there's so much that way. The combat as well would just require such a insane budget, right?
Yeah.
For live
There's
action.
something they do called the Iron Rain, and all I want to see is that done justice. It's a military tactic that they use, and it is so sick. But all that to say, like, it would be such an impossible adaptation if you do it live action. And I think there's no confirmation, but it has been picked up to be adapted by a studio. And I think they're going to try to do live action, and that's not an exciting thought for me.
Well,
It's
something
terrifying.
at least that I'll say about my experience reading it. maybe I missed it, but I had no idea until this conversation right now that Reds were 3 to 4 feet tall. I just imagined them as, weaker and like, more frail and stuff. So what I'm saying is that didn't affect my experience of the book at all, So like, if they were to just take away the height differences, not a huge issue, I don't think, for like a live action adaptation. I actually live action would prefer if they did that rather than trying to like, because I just visualizing it like really in live action, I feel like would be so lame unless, like you're saying, unless they nailed it, which I just don't know if I trust someone to nail it. Yeah, in live action. Animated, yeah, sure, do whatever. Like, I don't care. Do whatever. Like, you take it to the letter. Animated.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. I mean, you could change a lot. I mean, obviously, every adaptation will change a bunch, but just the world, and it truly becomes like with a budget what you can do versus what you can't do. And with Red Rising, the first book, I bet you can get away with live action pretty well.
Yeah.
All of the epic space battles and like the obsidians and stuff. Like, I want to see a monster walk in, not just some big dude,
Yeah.
Like, you got to get a bunch of people like the Mountain from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like, that's
but then
the scale
even
I'm
then,
looking for.
like, you also kind of want in animation, you can get like Kingpin, like
exactly
technically a person, but not really.
Yeah.
Like the Mountain in Game of Thrones, he's huge and he's terrifying, but he is a guy that you could be, like potentially. And so I see what you're saying for sure.
Apparently he wanted to get it made as a movie originally, and then he sold the TV rights. So it's in early stages of development as a TV show, but it didn't say anything about live action or animation. But interestingly enough, talking about the animated adaptations, you may have heard that Twilight is being remade as a series.
Yes.
But as an animated series, interestingly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So that is one that I'm like, weird, interesting. That remaking
Finally,
Twilight.
it's approaching the medium it was made for.
Yes, exactly. That one. that was the main issue with those movies, is that they weren't animated. That was what people. That's what the fans were wanting.
Yeah.
So yeah, my answer to this one actually is this book actually has pictures in it. Some might call it a graphic novel. And it has been adapted before, but not very well. And it's called Star Wars Fascinating Facts. So it's a book. It's a story full of lore, history, and stories from the greatest galaxy by Pablo Hidalgo. And just a quick, fun story about this book. I was really excited for this book, and I read it in about 2 days, just because I love Star Wars. And I went to Barnes & Noble the day it came out, and I walked up to the attendant and said, "Hello, do you have Star Wars Fascinating Facts in stock?" And they were like, let's check. And they did, and I bought it. Anyway, no, the book that I actually mean
Great story.
is Watchmen. I don't know if you guys have read Watchmen.
I've not.
But it is hailed as...
I've watched some of the show.
So the show is not an adaptation. It's a sequel, actually, to the comic, which is kind of along these lines of, it's unadaptable, which I would say, to an extent, is true, because...
Is the movie not good?
The movie is fine. I would say the movie is good in its own right, but it's, again, very hard to adapt the subject matter. It's very, very long as well. It's excellent. That was almost my answer for something people should be required to read, just because of how well written this is and just how much it explores the characters. Like, it basically, the premise is, what if superheroes had come in and affected the Vietnam War, and the U.S. had won the Vietnam War because of this character named Dr. Manhattan, and he just came out and just razed Vietnam to the ground, basically, and forced them to quit, and kind of what the world would look like if that were the case. And then kind of dealing
I had
with
no idea that was the concept.
Yeah,
First,
yeah, it's really really well made, and then like kind of the aftermath of that of having to deal with Dr. Manhattan existing on Earth, and at any point he could just come and he could destroy the Earth at any point, but also he could just appear like he can teleport, and he's just all powerful essentially, and so just the kind of that fear that exists because of his existing, and then also just the aftermath of what the world looks like because the U.S. won the Vietnam War. And so there's a lot of characters, like Rorschach is kind of the main character that it follows, and he's kind of like a true anti-hero and kind of like a detective. And it all starts off with one character getting murdered and then him investigating, and kind of all the story that untangles from there, and kind of the ultimate response to these heroes and kind of how to keep the world in check and things like that. So it's excellent, but very, very difficult to adapt. There were some huge changes in the movie version, and then the show is a sequel to the comic, and it's good in its own right. I didn't love it, but I did think it was an interesting take. The guy who writes these who wrote Watchmen is named Alan Moore, and he hates adaptations of his work. He's just like a very interesting guy who writes really, really awesome comics. He's written a lot of Batman stories that people love, and he wrote Watchmen and a few other things that people have loved and that have been adapted, like V for Vendetta as well, for example. And he just refuses. If it was up to him, he would never have any of his work adapted. But it is, and he refuses to watch them. And he adamantly goes out of his way to say, I hate them. Like when the Watchmen show came out, he was like, I will never watch this, because Damon Lindelof, the guy who wrote the show, put on like Instagram or Twitter or something, like, hey, Alan Moore, I know that you hate it when people adapt your stuff, but like I love Watchmen. We're trying to be as faithful as we can to it. And he like responded and was like, I don't care. I will never watch this. F you for making this. Like, this is horrible. So it's like, yeah, he is just like so adamantly against his stuff being adapted. But along the lines of the animation thing, there is an animated movie coming out this year. And I think it's a two-parter of Watchmen. And so I'll be curious to watch that. If nothing else, I'm always interested. I don't know that they'll be able to do it super justice because, again, it's very hard to adapt. But animation is certainly the way to go with this one as well.
Especially with superheroes, honestly, it's so much easier.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because, like, the mechanics of flying, shooting laser beams, you can just draw a picture and animate it on a screen.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Totally.
It's so easy. That's why we do it.
Yes.
It's like the logistics of like making Miss Marvel's powers. Miss Marvel in Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, depends on the era. The logistics of making Captain Marvel's powers look good in live action is like hard. There's a bunch of stuff that you have to do, but then Carol Danvers, that's the Miss Marvel I'm talking about, from Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the animated Avengers show. Yellow lasers, easy, bam, done. Like, it's you draw a yellow cylinder coming off of her hands and it's fine. Like, that's all it needs to be. And so, I'm with you. And it looks cool. Like, you just don't have to try to make it look real, you know?
Totally. And that's one of the things I've thought about a lot with Red Rising is they do a lot of duels in it, but the weapons they use are called razors, and they're basically swords that can turn into whips and then retract into like a sword, basically, right? And so pretty cool. And if we get a TV version with a TV budget, I just don't think we're going to see some epic, like...
Maybe it's on Apple
like
or something.
Trying to coil around someone and take off a limb, stuff like that. It is so sick in the books how they describe it. And it's just animated. Yeah, you can do that. It would be awesome.
Yeah, live action would be tough.
Live action would be it'd be tough.
My answer is also a book that is my go-to answer for my favorite book of all time. I think I've talked about this exact thing on the podcast before, but you know what? Bummer. We're talking about it again today, which is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway.
Interesting.
I adore that book. I get about 50-50 responses when I tell people that it's my favorite book. Some people roll their eyes real hard and other people are like, oh yeah, it's awesome. You know, I think it's a divisive book in terms of how people feel about it. But the reason it would be hard to adapt is because there is basically zero dialogue in that book. There's a little bit at the beginning when the boy is talking to the old man, and then there's like, I guess, a little bit more at the end. The rest of it is just the story of this guy alone on a boat, basically having the worst day at his job.
Not trying to make anyone have the worst day at their job.
Worst day at their job.
And it's a very tragic book, but it also is an exploration of what it means to be human and what obsession can do to someone and just all of these different things. There's so many themes packed into it. It's a short book. It's like 120 pages. And it is so beautiful. The adaptation would be really hard to do, but what I would do is what's the guy's name? There's two guys, and I always say the wrong one.
I haven't read it.
Robert Eggers.
Oh, Robert Eggers and
Like the lighthouse guy?
the Lighthouse guy?
Yeah, the lighthouse guy. I think that if he did it, it could be really good. It's not really up his alley because it's not a horror story.
But he could do it.
But
He
it's
could make it.
there's kind of dark and haunting elements to it. And I think that he would do a really good job of basically finding a way, because the book itself has almost like a daydreaming element to it, where he, even in these horrific situations that he's in, starts to daydream about how DiMaggio is playing. What's the score of the game that's happening today? I wonder how that's going. And kind of the self-distraction that he uses through his other interests and flashbacks and memories. And I think it could be really cool to tell the story of this character. I would even start it without the intro of him leaving. I would start it with him on the ocean, alone in a boat, with a line in the water that he's, holding with his hand. And then slowly throughout the movie, just intercut these flashbacks of like him not having caught anything for, I think it's 82 weeks in the book. Like he's just so behind. He has no money. And like these little flashbacks giving you exposition of this person's life. So at the beginning, you're like, why is he so obsessed with staying out here? And by the end of the movie, or maybe not by the end, but by a certain point in the movie, you understand him and you understand this obsession that he has, and you're on his team, and it becomes more tragic because you so desperately want him to succeed, but you also want him to survive. I just think that it could be beautiful, but it would be really, really hard to get it right.
I like it. That's a good answer.
Yeah, there are a couple adaptations, one from the 50s and then an animated one, short film from the 90s. So I don't know if you want to check those out, but they exist. I don't know if they're good. That would have to be your call. But yeah, I'll have to read that. I never actually had to in high school, so. Or if I did,
it was
have
junior
to,
high.
junior
It was
okay.
on a list of approved books for me.
Nice.
So it wasn't like everyone read it, but I
And
chose that one.
It was the smallest.
Honestly, probably.
Yeah.
And then that was one of the ones where in that moment I was like, I love this. Like it wasn't like I came to appreciate it later. In junior high, I was like, this is perfect.
That's sweet.
And I've read it since, and I just love it.
Cool. Well, Nick, why don't you take us home with our final question?
My final question is along the lines of what we talked about, but it's, which book have you reread the most? Or in another vein, what book do you enjoy reading every time you come back to it? And I will go first. The first one is from a required reading in 6th grade, and it is Pride and Prejudice.
Nice.
You wouldn't believe it. When I was in 7th grade, my mom saw a piece of paper detailing a big book report outline project And she said, "Oh, what's this?" And I said, "Oh, that's a book report that I have to do." And she's like, "When's it due?" I said, "It's due in 2 days." And I had not chosen a book. I had not started on the project. Nothing.
Love
And so
those.
she looked at the list of, one of the 8 books you could choose from, and Pride and Prejudice was on there, and she loves Pride and Prejudice. And she was like, "Let's do this one." And so we read it in 1 day. We sat and we read the entire thing.
Wow.
Wow, what a good mom.
Yeah, shout
That's
out.
Honestly,
awesome.
yeah. Shout out to my mom.
Shout out to your
Yeah.
mom. That's sick.
But, since I didn't reread it until almost college, but since then I've read it. If I'm like waiting for a book or I'm just like, what do I want to read? I'll just listen to it. It's not that long, and it's just a fun book. It's old English, but it's a good book. It's a little heart twang, makes you feel good, and I like it. And then there's one other book that I love rereading. It's called. Have any of you read Ranger's Apprentice?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
The first
No,
two.
Awesome.
I've been told to, but I never did.
Awesome.
So there's a spin-off series called The Brother Band Chronicles, and I like it way more than Ranger's
nice.
Apprentice. But
Wow.
the first book is so much fun because it just tells the story of like a group of 8 boys who like didn't get chosen to be in a brother band, and they just like got put together. They're all a bunch of ragtags, and they end up being the best. And it's just such a fun book. And so those are my 2 like favorite rereads.
Nice.
That's great
pretty sweet.
answers.
Yeah, really,
Was
really
that
good.
project for Mrs. Lee's class in 7th grade?
It
I
was
knew it, bro. I was gonna
Seventh
say, I
grade.
remember that.
What did you read in one day, Lucas?
I did not read in one day. I don't even remember what book I chose. Maybe something like Star Wars Fascinating Facts. But
I've heard it's a good one.
Yeah.
I've heard it's a
And it
really
was
good one.
probably on the approved
yeah, I'm
list.
sure it was
yeah.
on the list.
I'll go second because I said it before, and it's a lame answer. I really am racking my brain. I don't think I've ever reread a book. I don't think I've ever picked one back up.
Dang,
and
that's
reread
wild.
That's
it.
wild.
All the books I've read once, and I've liked it, or didn't like it, and then that was enough for me. And this kind of goes back to my existential crisis, maybe a couple post credits ago. But hey, maybe I'll challenge myself to reread a book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Find
there's so
something
many.
new.
There's so many out there to read. Why go
Yeah.
back?
because sometimes it's
That's-
good to have
that's-
an experience
Well, it's
that
the same
you
with
enjoy.
rewatching a movie.
It's true, and I don't do that super often.
Yeah,
Except for-
that's also fair.
I mean these ones behind me.
Dune.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that
on.
for me. Sorry guys.
I got my answer.
Go.
I similarly have not reread very many things, basically nothing, because I've also barely read anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I already
Yeah.
talked about The Old Man and the Sea, which I think I've reread the most. So I'll go with the 2 other books that I think are the only other books that I've reread, just at all. And they are the Mistborn trilogy and Alloy of Law, because I also read Alloy of Law when it came out. Alloy of Law is honestly maybe my favorite one. It's so cool. But
Is that the first of the Wax and
it's the
Wine?
first of the second era. Yeah.
Yeah,
So cool. Oh, I just love that book. But
it's good.
Mistborn was great on a second read, specifically the first and second book. Mistborn, they're making references to stuff that doesn't come up till the second book, till the third book. It just kind of helped confirm to me that, like, oh yeah, Brandon Sanderson's not making this up as he goes. He's got the whole thing figured out, and then he puts them out in like episodes, basically. And I really thought that was awesome. Also, Well of Ascension, the second book in that trilogy, was my least favorite when I originally read it, and is kind of famously everyone's least favorite. And on a reread, knowing what it's leading to and knowing what it's set up, honestly, maybe my favorite reread experience of any of those 3 books. It just, there's so much in there that really establishes the setting for the third book that, as amazing as the third book would be, it would just not have worked if the second book was any different from what it was. So that's one of my answers. The other answer, I think the only other book that I've reread, and I've reread it. I read it the first time recently, and I reread it also recently. That is Dave Grohl's book, The Storyteller. Dave Grohl, frontman of the Foo Fighters. First part of the book is kind of him recounting his, rise to music, playing in different bands before playing in Nirvana and then moving into the Foo Fighters. But it's also just broken up by non-music related stories. And a lot of it is about family and how he didn't have a good connection with his father, and his mother was the best mother ever, and his desire to be the father that he didn't have, and the things that he has done for his family and the things that his family has done for him. And it really is just such a beautiful book. And there's a ton of name dropping in it, and it doesn't feel annoying because he's genuinely just such an interesting person that it's like there's this whole chapter about how his little girls realized that they could be strong and powerful because Joan Jett came over to his house, and they hung out with Joan Jett and had dinner with her, and she read them a bedtime story and stuff. But then they watched videos of her performing and just being this, rock goddess. And they're like, yeah, Joan Jett's super cool. And so the whole thing is just like the lessons that he and his family have learned through his experiences in music. And it's so good. The audiobook is amazing. I think it's free on Spotify. And also he reads it. So like genuinely, it's one of those books where I was like, if I was just reading this as a book, it would be not nearly as cool. But hearing him read the book,
that is cool.
It's great.
When the author reads the book
well
like
worth
that.
the read.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I've been listening to Tina Fey's book because it's also free on Spotify, and it's only a few hours long.
Nice.
And it's great. She reads it as well.
I've heard it's
Yeah,
awesome.
she is hilarious. But my book, I have reread a lot of books, especially when I was younger. I reread Harry Potter a lot growing up.
Nerd.
Yeah, true.
Nerd.
True. Reread that more times than I care to admit, just because I love those books. It's been a while, but also like Percy Jackson and Fablehaven, I remember revisiting as a youth as those were coming up. And we were going to do the Percy Jackson show for next episode, but
Yeah, that's true.
we didn't end up watching it. Nick said he didn't have anything to talk about for it because he did not like it at all. So that has kind of made us drag our feet on getting around to watching the rest of it. But no, the book that I think I've reread the most, that I love the most, is super relevant, super topical. It's The Art of Coloring, Star Wars 100 Images to Inspire. It's only images, which is really nice. You don't actually have to read. And you can go through and just color in. Let me color in something.
See, it doesn't look colored in though. So
That
have
is
you read it
so
before?
Funny.
Yeah, I don't know if you have read that.
Yeah, no, here's one. I started coloring this, Darth Vader, blue and green. There's
Is famously a blue and green character.
yeah, that's the art of coloring, is that you get to do whatever you want. Yeah, here's this.
Yeah.
This clone that I did and gave up on because the flowers were taking me too long, and here's this big old Obi-Wan.
That looks great.
That looks awesome.
Yeah, so that's that one. I would highly recommend it. Oh, here's Darth Maul, which was fun. No, it's Dune. It's just
This
Dune.
is
My
what you've
actual
been doing
answer
this
is Dune.
week?
My answer is Dune.
Gotcha.
I love Dune. I've read it. Honestly, I've probably read it. I've read it physically once and listened to it probably half a dozen times. I love that book so much. I listened to it in anticipation for part 1. I listened to it randomly just in the middle of last year, and then I listened to it in anticipation for part 2. And I read it first time in high school, and then listened to it. Like I just love listening to that book, partly because of how much I love it, but partly because of how many details there are and how there's always something new to pick up on. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Dune.
Beautiful
Alright.
quotes in it.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
recently went and I picked that book back up from a friend who I'd lent it to. And I genuinely, I made the mistake of just kind of opening it up at a stoplight and immediately was sucked in. Random page, just kind of oh yeah, this is this is cool.
Good
And then
book.
like got honked at and had to keep driving. Got home and I sat down and read just a random chapter out of the middle of the book,
Dude,
the
it's
whole
so
chapter.
good. It's so
Just because
good.
it's, especially like the first time you read it, it's hard because it's
Oh,
dense
totally.
and there's a lot to it and it's tons of terminology. Once you've figured everything out, I can already tell if I were to reread that book, I would just, first of all, blast through it. Like I wouldn't, because I had to like kind of work to maintain my momentum with that book. Ain't no way that would happen on a reread for me. I'd just be fully sucked in. Oh, it's so cool. So cool. Well, hey. Yeah.
And I have one really quick, very funny
hear it.
story about
Yeah.
books.
I wanna hear it.
And
This better
it
be
is-
very funny.
It is.
Good.
There's an author. His name is Richard Paul Evans. He wrote
heard
Michael
that.
Vey.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I've read that one.
And so he's
Electric
a Utah-based
Boy.
author. Yes, Electric Boy.
With like what,
And-
tinnitus or something? Or
Tourette's.
Tourette's.
Is he actually
Gotcha.
Tourette's?
Yes, he does have Tourette's. And it's like a big plot point in the book. They constantly bring up his Tourette's. But
Do not remember that.
I never read those.
reread it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I guess that's my reread is the boy with Tourette's
Michael
and electric
Boy
powers.
with Tourette's, Book 1 of the Michael Bay.
Bay series. But at BYU, Brigham Young University, there is a professor who is also named Richard Paul Evans. And so I work for the IT department at BYU. So if you have to, something happens, you call in, you call us. We have we have a couple rules, and one of them is Richard Paul Evans, the professor at BYU, cannot call us. He is banned from calling.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And the whole time I thought it was the author, but it's just a random.
just a
Some other guy? Why is he banned? Why can't he call IT?
I have no idea. Apparently, it's like too many bad interactions. But one time, I was in the office and the guy next to me just like started talking to someone, and then just like he's like, "Tell your department to call us," and then he hung up. And he's like, Richard Paul Evans just called me.
That is so funny.
That's hilarious.
Needing
That
an
is
actual
so
like
funny.
screening for one of the
And
dudes.
it just happens to be that guy.
Oh.
That's so funny. It's the same name.
That is so funny, dude.
Well, because Brandon Sanderson teaches a course at BYU as well, so it's not that crazy to
He
think
does,
that
yeah.
the other guy has a course
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, could
Yeah,
happen.
that's perfectly reasonable.
Man, that is very funny. You did it.
did it.
You did it.
I did it. It
Good
was
job.
Well, yeah.
Good job on having a very funny story for us.
Thank you for
Thank you,
joining
thank
us
you.
this week, Nick. This was very fun.
Yeah.
Books is a topic I kind of can't believe we never did a full episode on until now. So it's this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I loved it. I love books, love talking about them, have a bunch that I'd like to talk about, and so this was awesome. And I love you guys. I love your podcast.
Oh,
so
we
much.
love
love
you,
you.
Nick.
Love
Well-
you.
Our listeners also might love you because they hear your name at the end of
That
every
is
episode.
true.
So I'm going to
That's
give
true.
you a
Sure
chance
do.
to, in person now, not to her, but on the podcast, give a special shout out to a special someone.
I want to give a special shout out to Kel. Kel.
To us, but that's fine.
K-E-L-L, yeah.
Special shout out to Kel.
This is a reading
this
episode,
week.
not a spelling
Yeah.
episode. Oh, come on.
This is a special shout out to Kel from Nick Bell, and also a shout out to Kel from Roan Oberg, Michael Polonsic, Easy Lob, Britton Inkley, Riley Allen, Ian James Martin, and Hannah Steed. We couldn't do it without you, and honestly, she couldn't do it without you. So thank you guys so much. If you are listening and you didn't just hear your dang name, you can next week if you support us on Patreon. It's $3 a month, and you can get a shout out, give a shout out to Kel at the end of every episode, and also have access to bonus episodes that are post-credits episodes where we yip and yap. So,
We do.
True.
yeah, go ahead and do that. Thank you, Nick, for being here. And Lucas, you do the rest of this because you
Nick,
were...
do you want to give a quick testimonial
Okay.
about our post credits and the opportunity to be a patron or a patron?
I, Nicholas Hans Bell, do testify that Man Cave Movie Night is very cool, and the Patreon is very fun. I enjoy it every time. When you guys play Framed, I like to do it as well.
Yeah.
I've only gotten one right, but it's fun.
Hey, we'll
It's okay.
get
Lucas got all of the other ones.
Yeah,
for you,
Yeah,
we'll
so.
get you some today.
It's
yeah.
Lucas's world, and we're living in
Yeah,
it.
That's
So.
true.
Heck yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah.
you so
Thank
much,
you
Nick.
so much, Nick, for joining us. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you.
Of course. Bye.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Ooh.
No.
Ooh. Snuck in.
From me. Oh,
We will
we'll
see you on another Man Cave Movie Night Monday.
I'm gonna say it anyway. Bye, bye, Bazinga. I can't not. I can't not say it.
Bye bye.